Hey, it's me. How are you, folks? Tom Rush is our guest. You could call him a lot of things: musician, performer, entertainer, storyteller, singer, guitarist, more and more songwriter. He has a new album out. Voices is on Appleseed Recordings. Mr. Rush, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Paul.
It's a great pleasure. I've been collecting your albums for some time. I really enjoyed this one. And you've been writing quite a lot lately. How has that been for you?
Well, it's been curious. I've written more, I think, in the past couple of years than I have in the past few decades, and I'm not quite sure why that's happening, but I'm not complaining. I'm happy with the output. I've always done, as you know, mainly other people's songs, maybe one or two of my own. But this album, except for two traditional songs, is all stuff I wrote, and that's not happened before.
But you don't have any idea why. The muse just showed up.
And the muse has been showing up, yeah. And I've been jotting things down when it happens, and so it's been a fun process. We actually ran short of songs down in Nashville. We recorded the basic tracks on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Tuesday night, Jim Rooney, the producer, got all upset. He said, "Wait, we've only got 11 songs. I wrote one down twice. We've only got 11 songs." He got very upset, and I said, "Jim, what is there a law or something?" He said, "No, but it's customary." and I said, "Okay, Jim, calm down. I've got it. I've got this covered. We're gonna number the album the way Trump numbers the floors on his towers. We'll have songs 1 through 6 and 8 through 12. Nobody will notice." And he wouldn't go for it. So I had to go back to the hotel and write a song that night, and that's where "If I Never Get Back to Hackensack" came from.
So tell us a little bit about Mr. Rooney. He's produced quite a number of albums. What is he like?
Oh, he's a gem to work with. I've known Jim for forever, since God was in third grade. He used to be part of the Club 47 scene back in the early '60s in Cambridge, and I've known him since then. And he's now a very well respected producer in Nashville. Lives in Vermont, but he goes down to Nashville, and he's got these bunch of players that call themselves Rooney's Irregulars. And they come in and they know what to do. They've got this Nashville telepathy going on. And Rooney's the perfect producer for me, because I tend to want to tweak and fiddle and fuss with things until there's no life left in them. And Rooney's philosophy is, if it feels good, it's good. On to the next. Don't worry about perfection. Worry about it feeling good. And so it's not at all unusual to get things in the first take when you're working with Rooney. I took a young keyboard player named Matt Nakoa down to Nashville with me, who's a monster talent. He's been playing with me on stage for a few years now, and he's got his own career, but whenever possible, I bring him along. And I'll be bringing him to Ohio. But he came down. He was knocking out these studio players down there. Some of the best players in the world. And Matt's over in the corner playing Chopin on the rickety upright. And I heard two of these guys saying, "I don't think he's from around here."
It seems like singers, recording artists, whenever they do an album, inevitably they get asked, which song is your favorite from this collection? But I would ask you instead, I would not ask you that, but I would ask you if you could pick a song on the album to represent the album, like if you only had one to present from this album, Voices. Also a difficult question, but which one would it be?
Well, I think it would be Voices. And I actually named the album that for that reason. There's a lot of diversity there, which is not unusual for my projects. And they sound a bit schizophrenic. There's a little But on this project, there's a rock and rolly tune. There's a couple of introspective, quiet songs. There's a silly song about Hackensack. There's, it's all over the map. And the song Voices, I thought, for any of them, sort of encapsulated the idea that if you listen, you can hear voices in all kinds of places. And so that I guess that would be the tune I would pick to represent the album.
I really, really like that song, Voices. And I'm hoping you can tell us what were your thoughts? What was going through your head when you were writing it?
I was just thinking about this earlier today. I do not remember writing songs. Unless it's a song like Hackensack, where it takes a lot of right brain activity. You got to figure out, go to the atlas and look up silly names in New Jersey. And I remember writing that one, but the songs like Voices and most of the other ones on the album, I have no recollection of writing them. They kind of happen.
Would you say that there is any theme? Could you identify any theme that runs through your music? There's so many things that seem to go through music as a whole, love, religion. Could you pinpoint one?
I've thought about that as well, and I think it's stories. I look at all these songs as stories, and with a couple of them, it's pretty blatant. The Cold River song is definitely a story, but I think of them all as being stories, and with visual imagery. Those two elements, stories and visual imagery, would be the common thread. But as I mentioned a minute ago, I'm all over the lot. I've got up tempo songs and down tempo songs and sad songs and silly songs. So I think those would be the two elements that are consistent: stories, images.
What about the song Going Down to Nashville? Tell us about that one.
Well, as I said in the liner notes, I think it's the one age-appropriate song on the project. Most of these songs are written from the viewpoint of, I don't know, a 23-year-old or a 35-year-old. And Going Down to Nashville, it's an older guy who's looking back on life and trying to, close a circle. I've never, it's entirely made up. I never had a love in Nashville that I've always regretted leaving. But I think, we all have, at least people of my generation, we all have things that we wish we'd done differently. And it would be nice to be able to go back and, if not make everything right, at least try to tie up loose ends and have a sense of closure.
You were saying that you regretted leaving Nashville?
Well, in the song, it's the prettiest girl I ever saw. The last I was in Nashville, boys, was many years ago. The prettiest girl I ever saw, she begged me not to go, but I left anyway, and I traveled all over the world, and now I'm old, and I wonder if she ever thinks about me. And I know she's married, but I'm going to go back and say hello and say goodbye.
How do you go about selecting a song that you want to sing when it comes to other writers' material? What is it about a song that maybe makes you feel like you want to perform or record it?
Well, there's of course, the goosebump dimension. If a song really hits you on a visceral level, that's a good sign. And I think, again, stories and visual imagery are the common thread. I mean, I was thinking I go from Joni Mitchell's Urge for Going to Bo Diddley's Who Do You Love? I wear a cobra snake for a necktie. And I love them both.
How important do you think it is to listen to a variety of music?
I think it's always a good idea. I don't listen to enough other people's music. I think I should listen to more, because I get ideas for songs, and it's very, very often, it's like reading poetry. If I'm reading poetry, lines will pop into my head, and they very often have nothing to do with what I'm reading or what I'm listening to. But it somehow puts you in listening and reading, puts you in that space where ideas can come flooding in.
On that note, one of the songs from this album by Tom Rush, Voices, a classic, a standard folk song, Corinna, Corinna. And I'm wondering, did you listen to other versions of the song, like, for example, the Bob Dylan version? How did you come up with the arrangement?
I didn't actually. I mean, I'm sure I've heard Dylan's version and other people's versions over the years, because it's, as you say, it's a standard. It's been done a lot, so I'm sure I've heard it. But I didn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to research this one. The arrangement came about basically noodling around in an open D tuning on a 12-string guitar, and I came up with a guitar arrangement that I liked, and the guys in Nashville just took that and made it lovely.
You might be interested to know that my wife is named Corinna, and she's a Dylan fan, and she said, I think this version is better, the Tom Rush version.
Well, that's high praise. That is very high praise.
From Corinna herself.
Well, it's funny because Matt Nicola, the keyboardist I was talking about, he thinks that's the best cut on the project.
Oh. Do you like to have some kind of relationship with the writers when it comes to the writers that you have covered through the years?
I would say no. I like to have a relationship with the song. But usually when I learn a song, if I learn a song from somebody else, I will listen to the original version as little as possible. I'll listen to it until I think I've learned it. And then I won't listen to it again, because I want my treatment of it to drift away from the moorings and to become different, become more me than whoever wrote the song. So, I do have relationships with a lot of the writers, but I think it's the relationship with the song that is most important when it comes to recording or doing a show on stage.
It could be difficult at times, and there's no rule that we would have to put you in any kind of category in terms of, are you a folk musician? Are you a singer-songwriter? Are you blues? I guess you could say all, but how would you, if you had to, categorize yourself?
I wouldn't. Oh, that's your job. I learned very early on. My first album came out on a little local label in Cambridge, and it was being carried at the Harvard Coop, which was a big deal. This was the record store in Harvard Square, and they were carrying my album. And I went in, and I saw that they had it under in the folk bin, and I summoned the manager over. He said, "No, I do some folk songs, yes, but I also play some blues on this." And he said, "Okay." And he took the album and he moved it over into the blues section. And I said, "Well, but wait a minute. I not only do folk and blues, but there's and he moved it a couple more times and then gave up and just put me in miscellaneous." And I learned my lesson. I don't know. I'll be in as many categories as I can be. Because there's an up song, there's a down song, there's a sad song, there's a funny song, I bound around among the genres as well. I guess I don't know if what does Americana mean? Does it mean anything anymore? I know that folk doesn't mean anything except an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
To me, folk songs are the traditional songs, Barbara Allen and Corinna, that have been around for years, and there's 100 different versions, and none of them is the correct version. That's a folk song. If you wrote it, it is not a folk song. Even if you're Woody Guthrie and you wrote it, it is not, in my definition, a folk song. But nobody observes my definition. So I think that the labels come to mean less and less. And I guess I'll go back to Jim Rooney. Is it good? Does it feel good? Then it's good.
Well, nonetheless, amongst artists that maybe someone would think of when they think of you, either people that you have interpreted their songs or just, I don't know, just artists like Arlo Guthrie maybe, or your John Prines, do you feel any kind of familial, is there some kind of community that you feel with artists like that?
Well, I look up to both Arlo and John. They're both monstrously talented and creative people. So I'd be honored to be considered in the same sentence with them.
Do you think it's more important to be humble or more important to be confident when you're an artist?
I am confidently humble. Well, I think you need to be confident, especially if you're going on stage. You have to, at least for that moment, feel that you're totally capable of doing what you're setting out to do. Otherwise, you're in deep trouble. But I think then when you come off stage, you have to be able to say, well, that was okay, but this and that could have gone better, and I'll try to fix it next time. So I think you need to have both elements, but maybe not at the same time.
Is there any commonality that you noticed amongst your fans?
White hair? No, I've actually got fans from across the generations, but the preponderance of my crowd are the baby boomers. I think they're very, very sensitive, perceptive, intelligent people.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about your experiences in radio. What are your memories of that time that you spent?
Oh, Lord, I started out, if your listeners don't know this, I started out having a little radio show on Harvard's little FM station while I was a student there. And it was a live music show. And I had to get guests to come on my show because I was the host, and I would do a song or two, but my guests would do most of the music. So I had to go find guests to come on the show. And I was not born to be in radio. My nickname at the station was Dead Air, because if I couldn't think of anything to say, I wouldn't say anything. Seemed reasonable to me. But anyway, to find guests, I had to go trolling in the coffee houses, especially on the open mic nights, the hootenannies as they were called then. And I discovered that you could get into a hootenanny for free if you had a guitar with you. And then I discovered you could get in for free if you had a guitar case with you. And so I'd put a 6-pack in the guitar case and head off to the hootenannies. And one night I got caught. They ran out of performers. They said, "Hey kid, get on stage." I had to borrow a guitar and do 3 or 4 songs, and I was terminally nervous. I have no idea what I did. I have a friend actually who was there that night who does remember what I did. But anyway, apparently it went over well enough that the owner of the club called me a week or so later and said, "Somebody or other is sick. Could you come down and do a show?" And that's where it started. But it came out of the radio show called the Balladeers.
The Balladeers. Now, did you have anyone on that show that you found yourself in awe of?
Oh, very often. When I inherited the show, it had actually just been local folkies. But I broadened the net, and I decided to get some nationally known artists who were coming through town to try to get them on the show. And I had Jesse Lone Cat Fuller was one of my guests, and Pete Seeger was one of my guests, and Odetta, and I can't even remember who else. Baez came on, but she was one of the local kids. But yeah, I had on a lot of guests that I thought very, very highly of.
Do you find yourself in awe of artists today?
Not often. Not often. I frankly am in awe of this kid Matt Nakoa, who's playing keyboards with me. He's just monstrously talented. He's a killer keyboard player and sings like an angel, writes great songs, and he's cute, which is why I hate him. And there's another youngster about his age, early 30s, late 20s, named Seth Lear, Glier, who, if there's any justice in the world, will be a huge name before too long.
You have this new album, Mallett Voices. Does it matter at all to you what the critics say, what the writers, the journalists have to say about an album you do?
As long as it's something good, no. One of my favorite reviews for, I think it was the previous album on Appleseed called What I Know. And the reviewer said, "This is better than I expected." I thought that was, he gave himself away there. Of course, I love it if people enjoy what I do, and if they say so in print or on the radio, that's even better. If it's a negative, I don't think I've gotten many negative reviews, actually. No, I think other than it was better than I expected. But yeah, I'm thin-skinned. If somebody really lit into something I'd done, I'd feel badly about it.
What is the best thing about being Tom Rush?
Ooh, getting to talk to you on the radio.
Come on.
I'm sticking with it.
Oh. Well, one of the wonderful things about radio these days is it doesn't just air one time in one particular geographic area. It's surprising sometimes who it reaches. So this is very open-ended, just to give you the microphone. Whoever's listening in, wherever and whenever, what would you say to our audience?
Buy my albums. I have a kid in college. I guess that, it's all about connections, and nowadays the connections are on the internet. So TomRush.com is where my musical family gathers. I send out a newsletter, in fact, and you can subscribe to that. It's an occasional thing, it's not relentless. It's once in a while, but people seem to like it a lot. And you can sign up for that at TomRush.com. And I guess the other thing I would say is don't give up on America.
Very nice. Well, everyone out there, again, it's TomRush.com. Everything you might need will be there. And so, my last question, it's another big question.
Oh.
Who is Tom Rush?
Boy, as soon as I find out, I'll let you know. Still working on that.
That'll be our follow-up interview.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Rush, thank you very much for checking in with us. It's been a great pleasure.
My pleasure entirely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time.
Okay.